All right, everyone, welcome to the WFRC Budget Committee for May 9th, 2024. Let's do quick introductions of who's here, just for the record. Just holler out your name.
Bob Stevenson.
Awesome.
Bob Dandoy, Royce City.
Scott Wardle, Twilla County.
Jeff Silvestrini, Mill Creek.
Mike Newton, Morgan County.
Amy Winder Newton, Salt Lake County. All right, do you want us to go through WFRC staff?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll just introduce, and I'm not sure we heard from Lee Perry.
Sorry.
We got him.
Lee Perry,
Okay.
Box Elder County. I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm Marion Florence at WFRC, and with me are Andrew Gruber, Kevin Wells, and Andrea Pearson.
And Wayne Benyon.
And Wayne Benyon. There you are, Wayne. Hi, Wayne.
Great, thank you so much. So we need an approval of the minutes from March 14th. And we also need to accept the financial statements and check registers for February and March. So let's look at the minutes. Anybody want to make a motion on that?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second
Okay.
the motion.
We have a motion by Mayor Silvestrini, a second by Commissioner Newton. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, let's, what about the financial statements and check registers for February and March? Is there anyone who has any questions or wants to make a motion on that?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Stevenson, a second by Mayor Dandoy, right? Is that who seconded?
I seconded it. Mayor
Oh, it was-
Dandoy did the motion, I think.
Oh, you
Right.
sound like Bob Stevenson. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Oh, that's
Well, no,
odd.
you should be sorry. That should be a good thing, not a sorry thing. So,
All right, we have a motion by Mayor Dandoy, a second by Councilmember Wardle. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we'll go to item number 3. This is our public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to speak during public comment? I don't see anyone. So we'll go ahead and move along to item number 4. This is an action item where we need to approve the WFRC fiscal year 25 goals, budget, and unified planning work program. Marion, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Thank you. I'm pulling up my screen so that you can see the draft fiscal year 2025 goals. Is that what you're seeing? I hope so.
Yep.
And as we're going back to the materials that we looked at in March, the goals, the budget, and the UPWP summary. So this is what we looked at in March. Just as a heads up, we are hoping to approve this and take it to the council for their final approval, for the final approval of these goals, the budget, and the UPWP. And we don't have any significant changes to show you. There is one new grant that you'll see in the budget, which is exciting news. And then further down our agenda, just as a heads up, we're going to look at the personnel policy will probably be our most sort of meaty subject line today. And then just a quick look at the fraud risk assessment, which is something that we do annually. So back to these goals. Number 1, we collaboratively advance the Wasatch Choice Vision as a framework for integrating transportation, land use, economic development to address growth-related opportunities and challenges and maintain and enhance quality of life. That one I think we talked about last March and noted that the only change to that was that last piece where we really wanted to emphasize that these are policies and goals that we have to enhance quality of life here in our growing state. And we can certainly talk more about these. We have opportunity to continue taking comment on these as we go. This is a proposal to take these to the council in May, though, in a couple of weeks. Number 2, effectively,
Marion,
yes.
I just want to repeat, just to make sure it's clear to everybody. You said this already, but again, our process is, it's a 2-meeting process for the goals, the budget, and the unified planning work program, right? In March, we brought these to you first as a budget committee. We talked about all of them. Then we went to the council, reviewed them at the council, and the council authorized our releasing them for public comment. which we did. And we also sent them directly to the members of all of the COGs in the region and asked for input. And then with all of that input we got, which was very little, actually,
Yes.
got a few people that said, we looked at it, it looks good. We then bring it back to you now in May to review it with you. And again, Marion said this already, but the short story is nothing has changed, okay? With the exception of one new grant that we're getting. And then we would have you review this, and then you can ask any questions again, recommend any modifications. Then we would take this to our council meeting on May 20,
23rd.
Thursday, May 25th. Okay,
Third.
so just want, sorry, May 23rd.
23rd.
Okay, so I just wanted to just say, I said, Marion said it already, I just want to say it again, just make sure everybody's totally clear on here's where we're at in the flow of our process.
Thanks. Yes, and I had neglected to talk about the fact that we'd taken this out for public comment and made sure to have this out in the public where we could receive comment, and we did get some nice comments on it. So our number 2 is that we're effectively administering ongoing plans and programs, all of which are listed here and are very familiar to you. 3, we provide subject matter expertise to federal, state, and local officials and policymakers. And 4, we strive for organizational excellence. And so I can certainly pause for questions. I can continue going on to our budget piece of this. Are there any questions or comments? Excellent. Well, great. Well, we will take these. I will likely take that draft watermark off of them and march boldly into FY25 with these goals in place. That will be great. Next up is the budget. This is the red line of the goals. On the budget, we like to start by looking at the budget by line item, and the budget has increased by $100,000, and this $100,000 is a significant portion of a grant we were actually just awarded. It's a $140,000 grant, but we anticipate spending about 40 of that before we even get to FY25. So you'll see down here at the very bottom of the page, mixed use centers, visuals, and impact metrics. And so you'll see 40,000 spent in this year anticipated, and then a further 100,000 for next year. And this is a grant that Tim Watkins, who's new in our Community and Economic Development Department, applied. He was the lead in our team to apply for this grant, which is actually through the Utah Department of Commerce. And it's to help centers, mixed use centers, have visuals and impact metrics so that they can make informed transportation and land use decisions. And so we're particularly excited about this because it works with our transportation and land use connection program, but also with our new local administrative advisor program. It's really going to give us the tools to go out into the communities and give them these tools and help them interpret the tools that they can use to make decisions across our region. And so it's a program that will be rolled out in February of 2025, but then continue to be used as these tools. You know, it will be a resource, I think, for our communities. Is there anything else, Andrew, that you want to say about this new program?
Just that any of you that have been involved in community development activities as a politician or otherwise know that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And if you show, members of your planning commission or your public pictures that look unappealing, then the reaction is going to be, we don't want change. Don't do that. But if you show them pictures that capture the possibilities of what a enlivened mixed-use development can look and feel like, it really helps people to conceive of, oh, change is coming, but you mean there's going to be Mayor Silvestrini, I'll use the Mill Creek example. You mean there's going to be a ice skating ribbon, and there's going to be a restaurant, and there's going to be trees, and well, that looks nice, right? And so helping people to visualize, communities to visualize, and for you as elected officials to be able to share with your constituents visual images of what development could look like we think is a really helpful part of the process of planning for and moving forward on community development. So that's part of what this is intended to fund.
Excellent. And so the impact on our budget for next year was that $100,000, which you can see on contractual and under its own new program. And then I'm going to scroll down to our sources of funds. This is our revenue side. And you can see on state sources, we now have the State of Utah Department of Commerce line there. So we've added that 100,000 into the budget for next year. Otherwise, budget remains unchanged from what we discussed in March. And of course, as usual, there are 3 pages of footnotes following that can explain line by line, but I'm happy to take any questions and comments. Anything?
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right.
And the third piece of this is the summary that we prepare of our Unified Planning Work Program. And that is also not changed. This is the summary piece that explains all the work that we're doing, and the financials follow this work. And so each section of this, when we submit it to our federal cognizant agency, we will have the financials that you reviewed in the budget will be attached to each of these planning work program products, which I personally really find a helpful way to organize the work that we're doing in a way that makes sense to me. And it also, I think, is a really helpful way for us to be accountable for the work that we're doing and the funds that we're spending. So Wayne is here with us if anybody has any questions about this document.
Any questions for Wayne? Okay,
Sound like it.
sounds like you guys did a really good job. We don't have any questions right now. So we'll need, it looks like we need a motion to move these forward, and approve these. Does anybody want to make that motion?
And it's technically, Madam Chair, it's a recommendation to the council.
Oh, that
to-
they
to
approve it.
Approve them at the May 23rd meeting, please.
Yes,
Yeah, I would go ahead and make that recommendation that we present this to the full council for their approval.
I'll second the motion.
all right. We have a motion by Commissioner Stevenson, a second by Commissioner Newton. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. We'll move along to item number 5. This is the personnel policy.
Okay. So this, as I said, is the meat. I'll try to make this a little bigger. Not, and this is page 71 of your 133 page budget packet. And it is a memo that accompanies the proposed changes that we have to the personnel policy. And as you all are well aware, periodic reviews of policies is a really good idea, and it's something that we do here at WFRC. And we actually just recently, back in January of 2023, updated the accounting and administrative policies for some of the same reasons, a post-pandemic change in practices that needed to be codified in our policies. And also, of course, requirements are always being updated, and we need to always codify the kind of the compliance that we already are practicing. There's a lot of this that is already in practice at WFRC, but simply needs to also be in our policy. And we have 3 kinds, here I'll scroll down just a little bit. We have 3 kinds of revisions, and of course there's a proposed policy attached to this packet, and then also a red line so that you can really see what those changes are. The first kind of edits were edits for clarity and for streamlining. We just went through it and made sure that it was still making sense, a few years on down the road, and making sure that everything was clear and easy to follow. So that's a lot of what you'll see in terms of the red line. The second is current requirements. We're getting some legal review. You can see in the italics there, we've requested a review and input from legal advisors at ULGT, the Utah Local Government Trust, and they actually referred us to an employment lawyer at Manning, Curtis, Bradshaw, and Bednar. who works with the ULGT, and we get some nice discounted rates that way as well, which I appreciate. So we've started some conversations with them. They're really have been complimentary of our policies as they are, and are going to do an in-depth review of the few changes that we've proposed. So that is in process right now, but we wanted to bring this to the budget committee for your review concurrently so that we can come to the council on the 23rd with that. So this second section is codifying the practices that are already in place. Like I said, just to update, Utah Administrative Code is constantly being updated, and I wanted to make sure that we were codifying that compliance that we have. The third are evolving best practices. As you saw in our goals that we just reviewed, goal number 4 is we are committed to organizational excellence. And I think you're all aware of the evolving workplace and the ways that we are always trying to maintain our excellent staff. We have a really amazing staff, and we want to make sure that everything we're doing here at WFRC is supporting them and helping to make them, as we say in our goals, we're maintaining a work environment that maximizes the health, happiness, and productivity of our excellent staff. And I think that's really something that we take to heart here with our personnel policies. And so these updates that are proposed, I will scroll down a bit, and I can go through them point by point, but I will give
Marion,
Yeah.
Marion, would you just let's just start with this section 2.
Okay, go back to that.
Those edits that are needed to reflect the current requirements.
Sure,
They're all rather routine, but I do just want to, you
Yeah.
all are looking at your screens. You can just take a look at those bullet points. We don't need to go through them, but I just wanted to see if anybody has any
Yeah,
questions.
if anybody has any
Okay.
questions, these are going to be the ones I think that we of course have highlighted the changes that we want legal review, and these would be some of the ones that we will have reviewed, but have had preliminary conversations and gotten support from the legal advisors that this is a good way to go. So the job classifications that we have in our current policy were not as clear as they could be. So we've just clarified to comply with IRS definitions. Utah, as you all know, is an at-will state, and it's important to have that as a clause in our personnel policy. The URS and FMLA descriptions, those are constantly updated. And so we checked with both of those agencies to make sure that our personnel policy matched their definitions and any definitions of requirements for eligibility, that kind of thing.
Miriam, a question that I have for you.
Yeah.
On the URS, because I believe the tier 2 individuals this year is going to go up
0.7. Yeah.
Are we picking that up, or
We are actually not allowed to pick that up. It's a great question. We've talked to Kevin Wells, who's on our call with us, the manager of HR, and Andrew and I have had a couple of conversations around that. And I think that's a really good example of what we've done in this policy is to make, if in the future the employer is allowed legally to pick that up, our policy now doesn't define whether or not we will. So we've defined a budget cap, and then it gives the executive director the flexibility to make that decision. And so right now, Commissioner, we are not planning, we cannot pick that up legally, and then we haven't planned anything because we're anticipating actually that in next year's legislative session, they might update that law. And so we don't really want to react right now. Kevin has been in touch with the 11 employees who are affected by that in our organization to make sure that they're aware, but it's not in our personnel policy. We're trying to make a policy that gives us the flexibility to work within a budget and in compliance with policy and administrative code, but doesn't get into that kind of a detail. Does that make sense?
Right. No, and Miriam, I appreciate that. And again, this is just a real quick side note. I am a 100% believer that employees have to take a little bit of pride in their retirement and how they're going to do it. And it's not the employer's position to basically be the
the
to
determinant.
basically make sure people have to understand they've got to willing to invest in that retirement also, so.
Exactly. So that is going to be picked up by our 11 employees that are in that particular tier 2. And it's actually just one of the tier 2 types that ends up having that 0.7%. But very good point. Yeah, we've been watching that carefully as it has gone through the legislature, and we're in touch with URS and that
Or
kind of
not
thing.
gone through the legislature. I
I
understand.
know. Well, it went
legislation
through
on
and
that did not pass. So we'll keep an eye on it. Okay.
we are, yeah. We updated our payroll dates and our process. And so again, in that spirit of not defining things so closely that we are, end up out of compliance if we pay someone on the 16th instead of the 15th, we have updated our policy to match our payroll dates and our process. And then there are some administrative code and the Breastfeeding Protection Act that, again, we have been in compliance, but we did not have it written in our policy. And so we've been able to add those 2 pieces to our policy. And those are the edits that I would consider to be following requirements, updated requirements. Are there any other questions on that section? Excellent. Thank you. We can always come back to. And then the third section is on that evolving best practices. Again, my whole spiel about how it matches our goal, which I really like. And then it starts with the consideration that the budget committee really makes in establishing a budget. That is the fiscal constraint that we're working within. And so when we say a word like flexibility, it's always within that constraint of the budget. And so I want to make sure that that's really clear. And what we've done is increased, you can see that bullet point number 2, we've increased the flexibility around merit increases. We had written percent, and we simply took that percent out so that we can give a percent or a flat dollar amount. It just adds a little bit of flexibility for the executive director as he's looking at a budget and looking at a staff, just to make a tiny bit of flexibility there. We can still operate as we have been, but it adds that flexibility, which I like. The first is a note
Which is
clarifying.
particularly relevant for merit increases. And, sometimes, and I imagine some of you in your organizations will take differing approaches for different classes of employees, different compensation levels. And our policy was just a little rigid in not giving the flexibility. And you all know how incredibly important it is to make sure that you can work with and retain, good employees. And so we're just trying to, provide a little bit of that additional flexibility so we can. Sometimes you find yourself in a situation that within a rigid policy means that if you want to do something for one employee or a group of employees, you have to do more, spread it more and spend more. And that's less efficient also. So just trying to be a little more nimble in our approaches.
And to that point, we did add a sentence noting that any mentions to the executive director apply to the executive director and his or her designee. We wanted to be clear that the executive director could interpret and enforce these policies, but also make sure that if there was an occasion where the executive director needed to designate someone, that could be done. So it's really, just important to write this kind of thing down as a policy, I think. The third point is we are changing the number of hours that we will pay out of vacation and bringing that back just a little bit. I will note that these, in the last 4 employees that we have had leave, we didn't get anywhere near this number of hours. So this is not, constraining very many current employees, and those who have been with us over 20 years. We've made a carve out for them because they've been here for so long. But we do want to encourage employees to use their leave time and not bank it. And it also, there's a liability issue when we end up with a lot of hours on our books, as you all know, in that liability category. And so we think this is a reasonable limit. It's a full year's worth of leave that we are still offering to pay out if anybody leaves. We had various
Wait,
lists.
Marion, wait, you just said it's a full year's worth of leave?
I believe, yeah.
Yeah,
we
I
can
think
talk-
she's just referring to the amount of hours you can accumulate during
Yeah.
the year.
Right, okay.
Oh,
okay.
sorry. Yes, no, I don't mean we're gonna pay you a year.
Gonna say, yeah, that's pretty liberal there if you're giving somebody.
No, it's the hours
Sorry.
of leave that you would accumulate over the
Thank
course of
you.
a year, not hours worth. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay,
That makes a lot more sense. Thanks
all
for.
right, just making sure. Thanks, Bob, for.
Yeah, wow, WFRC is very liberal.
Okay.
So the fourth point refers to the fact that in some places in our policy, we've listed immediate family members, started going with, sibling and mother and father, and I think using the word family consistently through is a better practice and makes sense in terms of our benefits packages and other sort of leave categories that we have. And the final point is that we had some language that is outdated now that the Department of Workforce Services has updated their processes around appeals of terminations. And so that's another piece that will be reviewed by our legal advisors. But the Department of Workforce Services actually provides this appeal process. And so we no longer have to. In our policy right now, we require WFRC to hire a hearing officer, and that is an outdated piece that we wanted to make sure we took out. And that's the extent of my bullet points around the personnel policy updates. Again, there is a red line. And I will also just note that we didn't take out anything of substance. We left all of the categories there. And then worked on clarifying and updating within that structure.
So Marion, you mentioned this already. We're concurrently having legal review of this. And our expectation is that we're not going to get a lot of additional changes from them. But what we plan to do is if from that legal review, if we get any further modifications, that we would send them out to you, the budget committee, okay? And if there's anything noteworthy, we'll let you know. If we thought it made sense to try to have a conversation about it before the council meeting, we can try to do that. We just want you to be informed and have the opportunity to see and ask any questions. And if we are surprised and we get something from the legal review that's really significant and is causing us to fundamentally rethink, we can just not do it in May. Okay, we can push this off to August. We'd like to do it in May, but we don't want anybody to feel rushed or like you don't have time to review. So that's just our expectation is we'll go in May. I mean, Madam Chair, I should not presume that until you tell us we can. But our path forward is intended to go to May, and we'll see what kind of feedback we get, if any, from the lawyers. But we'll let you know any feedback we do receive.
I appreciate the red line. It was helpful.
Yeah, it was helpful. I think it's great that we're reviewing policy and making changes. I can't tell you how much county policy, like nobody's looked at for years and it's like so outdated. So I think it's so smart to be doing that as you think of it. But hey, question for you on healthcare leave. So you're giving the 12 hours a year basic or 12 days a year for healthcare leave. And I know this isn't one of the redlined things, so this is how it's been. It's not a new thing. But I'm wondering, is it best practice? Are you seeing other places where they allow you to get paid out for healthcare leave how do you word it?
We do call it healthcare leave because we have a broad definition of it, that it can be for taking care of a sick relative, that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm gonna, can I turn to you, Kevin? I do see that, but I haven't looked at it as closely as Kevin has.
Yeah, I do see that. I think our policies are actually very generous, which is why it doesn't make me feel bad trying to reduce it because our policies are so very generous. But I think, yeah, we do see payouts for both vacation and healthcare. But part of our policy also limits how much employees can accumulate in their healthcare balance. Because we give the option at the end of every fiscal year for them to roll over some of those days or receive payouts at that time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I'm, I guess, pushing back a little bit on is I mean, I see it where vacation days unused, you know, and a payout there. But for healthcare, you know, sick days or whatever, I guess I don't see that very often in with employers paying you out for unused leave related to healthcare. And I'm just kind of curious if anybody else on the call has, if you guys do that, or if you see that.
So
I don't know.
in the private sector, I've seen it where it's even combined, where it's, you know, it's just personal time and it isn't categorized how it, whether it's vacation or sick leave. And there have been payouts where you want to encourage people to use it or not use, you want people to use vacation time, right?
Right.
And I've seen payouts where you get concerned about the liability of carrying it. You know, I don't know. I mean, I think you have to also factor this policy into how people were hired and what attracts them to work for the salaries they work for as well. It's part of the benefits package that sometimes is part of the decision to work for someplace. So, you know, while I think we can always talk about whether it's too much or something like that. That is one of the things that people consider in their work-life balance.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And I do understand that, and that, you know, benefits do help us keep and attract good talent. I guess I want to encourage people to use their healthcare. I don't want them coming to work sick, right? Like we want them to, and if they can, anyway, I don't know. I guess I feel maybe a little bit differently on that one versus what regular vacation time does, but that's not what we're discussing today. That's just maybe feedback for if we ever look at that in the future. So anybody else have any questions or comments?
Just, I do, this is Lee Perry, oops. Yeah, I've got one question. Because we just went through this with a couple of our other groups up here in Box Elder. Do you have anything in place for, I couldn't see it in there, for other employees to contribute sick leave to somebody who has run out of sick leave?
We don't. We've talked to some of our partners about that because we have seen those, they're like sick leave banks. And we really have found, as Kevin said, that our policy is so very generous that people don't run out of sick leave, because not only do we have sick leave and vacation leave, but we also have a short-term disability policy that the employer does pay for. And so when people get into extended illnesses and extended disability, we have them covered. And so we haven't seen a need for that. And we haven't, we have had those discussions and haven't put that into place. Is that something that you're seeing?
Yeah, Bear River Health Department just had us adapt that for them up here in the Bear River area. So that's why I was just curious, because they wanted to add that as one of the benefits. So, but we also don't pay out for the leave in that area. So for the sick leave, we bank the sick leave,
right,
and then they can donate sick leave towards somebody else.
Yeah, that would be a hard sell around here, I think, because you know, if we said we don't pay it out, but you can give it to somebody, I think. But I think more to the point is that we haven't seen a need for it, which I really think is a good indication that our benefits are great.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. And I think Councilmember Winder Newton, I also like where you're going with this idea. I think the idea of having healthcare versus vacation is actually the piece that's dated of this policy. But as Mayor Silvestrini said, it's a ship that's hard to turn when we have people that have counted on these two different kinds of leave and specific kinds of payouts annually. And it is part of our really generous benefits package that is attractive to people here that work here. And so I think we can certainly do a little more thinking around it. And I think one of the directions I might propose in the future is that combining, because it's just best practice, I think, nowadays to say you have this much leave and we're not going to ask you if it's because you're sick or because you're going on vacation, you know, that it's just your days, you do with them what you need to. And that might be a way to frame the conversation and maybe do some changes in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, the direction the market's kind of going, like Mayor Silvestrini mentioned. So thanks.
Can I, to that point, let's take that topic as direction from the budget committee to do some further investigation of. Okay, let's look at what others are doing, what possibilities are. And we appreciate that feedback. I will note that this modification that we're proposing here is to reduce the payout for both vacation and for the healthcare leave. So it's not to take it away completely, but it is to bring it down somewhat in recognition of the fact that it was perhaps higher than it needed to be. So we're trying to right size it. And as we said, we'll go forward and do further analysis of this. I think that's a good approach. So thank you for raising that.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to take this off the screen so you can discuss.
Any other questions or comments on the personnel policy? If not, and if you're comfortable, we can look to recommend approval to the full.
Yeah, again, I'd make a recommendation that we send that to the full council for approval.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Bob, and a second by Lee. Any other discussion?
You know,
Right. All in
yeah, that's
favor?
about, then I'll make one comment.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 So Amy, one thing I would suggest, I'm just thinking about our discussion we just had here about some of this stuff. I think I would maybe be careful how much detail you go into with the full board, because you're probably going to get, 25 different opinions with what's there. But maybe what you could say is that also, as an FYI, we are going to be trying to do a little more comprehensive study of our benefits for next year, which may so that's just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know that we need I don't even know that we need to necessarily say that to the full council, unless there's a question about it. I think we, as a budget committee, can just know that we'd like to agenda that in the future.
Yeah, and that was actually the reason that Andrew and I decided to give you a much more thorough look, because we wanted to make sure that you as a budget committee felt confident reporting to the council, so that then I can also say budget committee has looked at it and we've talked about it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I assume, Marion, you can, any other commentary that you want to make to the full council, we can do then. And
yeah, and as you said, it will be limited.
Yeah. Everybody good with that?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. All right. Our next item is item number 6, is the fiscal year 24 fraud risk assessment.
And this, we can go over in detail or not. It's up to you. I wanted to just highlight the fact that we do this every year since 2020. And I'm sure that you are well aware of this document. It's something that we take a great deal of care in going through, and we are again at the very low risk level. And we have provided a memo that goes through each of the points to explain how we were ranked there. So I'm particularly proud of our internal controls. I think having 2 of us in the finance department with the support of the rest of our organizational operations team has really meant we can divide those areas that need to be divided. And I think that we have good internal controls and really good transparency, and our auditors were really complimentary when they came through last August. And so I'm confident that this is a nice report for us to submit this year.
And you all remember this is a requirement from the Utah State Auditor for all local government. So presumably this is happening in all of your entities as well.
And I think they're continuing. I think Seth Ovison in the auditor's office is always looking at it. He hasn't tweaked it or updated it since 2020. So I wonder if they'll do that. But in general, it is a really good framework for having these internal discussions, and for a board or a council or a committee like yours to have a rubric to evaluate the risk. And I like the fact that we have that. So this is only for your information. I will be filing this with the Office of the State Auditor, but I welcome any comments or questions.
Just I guess, question. I'm a little surprised that number 5, we're not able to mark yes on.
I'm not
Is that-
able to mark that because what I know that all of you are doing this training, but because I'm not providing the training to you, and actually there is a bill that was, I thought, before the legislature that would allow us to mark this off, that was saying, hey, once we've done this for one of the boards that we sit on as elected officials, we would like to be able to mark that off on all of them. And so this is us taking 20 points so that we don't have to take a lot of your time in training that you're already doing over and over again. So
Gotcha.
it's
That makes
it's such a great point.
Well, you know that most of us have had training. A lot of us have taken the auditor's training online, and I don't know if we get 100% participation, but some of us could provide you a certificate saying.
Oh yeah, and that's a great idea. This was a strategic decision on our part to, we're in the very low and thought we would consider it good there, but I like that point. I'm going to take that, and you may be seeing that question from us.
Yeah, we can ask the state auditor because it does say it's entity specific training. So I don't even know whether we could get credit for your doing it, even if we got your certificate, but
Yeah, I don't know. You know,
Yeah, but thank
that's
you.
basically a special district training is what it's really about. But the principles that they teach are universal.
They are universal, exactly. So I think it's worth them streamlining that process for sure.
Well, one thing about it, Frugal Dougal is going to be out of there here in another 7 months, so new guy will maybe change it. So
Yeah, I wonder.
Maybe he'll change that, and then he won't have to take that other survey he's that they're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
You guys
right.
assume it's going to be a man next in there? Is that what I hear?
well, if you're asking,
Maybe she
Yeah.
will.
Well, if you're asking who we're endorsing, I guess that's the question.
Hey, there's
So that concludes my piece. I do want to turn a tiny bit of time to Andrew, if we have a few more minutes. Is executive, I didn't even look at the agenda. Is that one of our agenda items, executive report? Yes, it is. Sorry, there you go.
Well, just ask our chair, and is there anything else that you have, or may I have a moment?
You absolutely can.
Okay, thank you. Thanks you all for your willingness to put some time in with us and go over some of these things in detail. It's just, I've said it before, it's really important to us that we have good policies and we have transparency, and we give you the chance to look at and understand and ask questions and give us guidance where you have it. So thank you for putting the time in. The only thing I have to report to you is I want to share our intention as an agency to apply for 3 federal grants under the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There's lots of grant opportunities, federal grant opportunities, and we don't apply as an agency directly for many of them. Most of them are more direct projects. And so some of you in cities and counties, or UDOT or UTA, will apply to get a construction project for transportation, let's say, and we'll often work with you or your communities, provide letters of support, but we as an agency don't apply directly for many things. But there are 3 upcoming things that we are aiming to apply for. And I'm just going to describe them briefly. This is not something that requires approval, but we want to inform you and see if you have any questions, and I intend to do this at the council meeting as well. In no particular order, Safe Streets and Roads for All. You may all remember that we did get a grant already for about $1 million to put together a comprehensive safety action plan for transportation for roadway users. We just adopted that plan very recently, and the communities in our region are now eligible to apply directly to the United States Department of Transportation for safety-related capital grants, which is terrific. We provided that report. Every city and community in the area, there's specific projects in our Safety Action Plan that are examples of things they can apply for. So that's great. We can talk about that more if you want, but what I'm saying in addition to that is in the next round of that program, there's yet more planning money that's available. And so it is our intention, and this is really Wayne and Kip Billings working on this with our colleagues around the region and our consultants to apply for another round of planning funding. We're anticipating applying for $200,000, and that money would be available to do more intensive planning and sort of pre-engineering analysis on specific roadway corridors. So if the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan was for the whole region, this would be to target, we're thinking around 6 roadway corridors to do more intensive safety planning in those roadway corridors. We haven't figured out exactly which those corridors will be, but our intention would be to apply for those funds so we can keep advancing this work. That's one. Wayne, did I say that well enough?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's one. The second one is sort of similar. It's a different federal program. It's the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program. So this is about trails, that there's federal funding available to help, again, do more detailed planning and sort of pre-engineering work on trail projects. And again, when we say trails, we're talking about for commuting purposes, paved trails for transportation, not dirt trails for recreation. But our intention is to seek $320,000. There's a local match on that of $80,000, which we had already budgeted to do work helping communities do trail planning. And now we're saying, wait a second, there's a federal program. We can take that money we already have planning to use and apply for a federal grant to increase it, essentially increase 80 to 400,000 total with a $320,000 grant. The reason I said it's similar to Safe Streets for All is because it's, again, identifying a handful of specific trail projects in the region that are already in our plans generally, but to do more detailed work on those to go from conceptual plan to actually implementable trail plan. All right. Where our staff is working, we're evaluating possible trail projects for that. We don't have that sorted out exactly yet, but the deadline for application in that is sometime in mid-June. So we're moving ahead on that one. I realize I should have mentioned that for Safe Streets for All, there is a local match component on that. But for that one, we're not assuming that we, WFRC, would come up with the match. We're assuming that the local communities that would be applying, we'd be looking for projects for, that they would be identifying match money from their budgets, and we would bring in federal dollars to cover the majority of that planning work for Safe Streets for All. This trails one, we're thinking that's different. We already have money budgeted for that for the local match. Okay, that's 2. The third one is what's called the Transportation Access Pilot Program. This third one is not a request for funding. This is rather to be involved in a national cohort of agencies, of transportation agencies, that are at the leading edge of evaluating transportation performance and metrics to focus on access. You may have heard us use this term, access to opportunities, as a metric for transportation performance rather than just, let's say, roadway congestion. Access is a broader and better measure because it asks the question, how easily can people get from their origin, let's say their home, to their destination, let's say their job or their school? It looks at the performance of the transportation system and where homes and jobs are located. It's a more holistic way to think about transportation planning and performance. We've been working on this already, and this is being picked up around the country. And I think this is a way that Utah can demonstrate leadership nationally and also affect the state of the practice around the country, and then also perhaps get some additional data and technical resources to help us continue this work. So this is just an application to participate in, again, a national cohort, no money involved. So those are the 3 that we're intending to apply for. I'd be happy to answer questions if anybody has any, and hopefully you all say hopefully your take on this is, wow, sounds good. That's it. Mayor Dandoy just gave the literal thumbs up. So that's sort of what we're hoping for, but we're happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions?
No, go for it. Go get them.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else anyone has? With that, I'd love a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, I don't know who made that, but
Everybody did.
everybody did. All right, raise your hand if you made a motion. I'll pick one of you. Okay.
And the
Lee Perry made the motion and a second by Mayor Silvestrini. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks,
Thanks, Madam
everyone.
Chair. Thanks, y'all. You guys are great. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.